Welcome to the People of Nature podcast, a platform to bring forth conservation optimism stories from the incredible India. Today we have Sneha Shahi in our studio as a guest speaker. Welcome, Sneha.
Hi Pankaj, thank you for having me.
So, for our audience, let me introduce you, Sneha. Sneha is a PhD scholar at ATREE, Bangalore. She has completed a master's in environmental science and is plastic campaign advocate for the United Nations Environment Program (UNEP), New Delhi. She primarily works to increase action and awareness on SDG 6, which is of water and sanitation, through a network of partners and grassroots leaders across India. Her notable work includes restoring streams inhabited by crocodiles in Gujarat with a team of students by her side. Sneha's doctoral work focuses on co-evolution of rivers and societies in a study that engages in understanding past versus present through socio-ecological systems framework for the river Tamiraparani in Tamil Nadu. Sneha is a recipient of many awards. Her work is highlighted in a docu-film called She Run the World on women in sustainability at Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. So today we have a versatile and dynamic speaker with us. So welcome once again, Sneha.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you for the beautiful words.
I think your bio is more beautiful than my words, so I just compressed it to put it into 100. But today is also a special guest, special topic that we're going to talk about, and we are primarily focusing on rivers today, which is also one of my favorite topics. So I'm going to enjoy this conversation myself, and of course our audience will also enjoy this. So let me move on to the this interview. Let me move on to the questions. So tell me, Sneha, you have been involved in river conservation for more than 4 years.
Yeah.
How and since when did your interest in reviving rivers begin?
So, my family is from Bihar, but I settled in Vadodara, where my
Okay.
grandfather went for the first time and settled. It's a small city in Gujarat. It's a beautiful, lush green city, slowly developing. So I've always been
Right.
very close to nature, and as a child, I got opportunities to live in like different cities, not cities at that time, places in Assam, which was Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, Tezpur, Chabua, all these places, and even Shillong for some time, because my
Oh, wow.
father's in Air Force, so we travel a lot. But I got to be close to nature quite some time, and as most of us in the field of conservation, I also grew up on the BBC documentaries and the Yellow Window, which is National Geographic. So grew up watching those things, and that sort of became like a role model. You know that I want to do this. This is interesting. I want to do this. So that inclination towards going into conservation and environmental sciences was always there,
Right.
but I think the awareness of how to get there wasn't, because like most of the students, we all grew up either preparing to be a doctor or an engineer. It's interesting to see how you should take the journey to become a conservationist. So it took time, and for me, I think water found me. I've always worked on very diverse topics, but
Mhm.
at the crux of it, water always remained. So
I
when I
see.
started working on this small stream, the idea
Mhm.
was to expand the idea of how these small streams and small freshwater channels are like veins to the rivers, who are the hearts of the land, because they are the ones that pump the blood, which is water. So that
Right.
analogy always stuck with me, and then how rivers can shape the world, which they
Mhm.
actually do. Such graceful and yet such fierce beings. So that inclination to work on rivers just started out in bachelor's, and it's just stayed even throughout my PhD.
Wow. So I think you have really beautifully navigated us through the journey, to the kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And you have specifically mentioned about your work on this one, stream, where actually your journey began. So my next question is about that. Your MSc project was on the restoration of urban streams in Vadodara.
Yes.
So how was your experience with the restoration of Bhukhi stream? How was the community response for the same?
Right. It started with me speaking to my HOD that I need to start my dissertation soon. I've done the plastic tide turners campaign, and he said, "You are as good with your words and science, but I
Mhm.
feel you also need to expand into more social causes because you have the voice that people would listen to." Well, I did
Yeah.
not believe him at first.
Mhm.
So I just started out looking for more team members who would help me with it,
Yeah.
and turns out there were more students interested in it, but most of them were in bachelors. So at our
Mhm.
department it's a bachelor's in honors, so you have to
Right.
do a dissertation.
Yeah.
So these 10 students sort of became my wards, or
Mhm.
kids like I call it. And we started working on this stream in November 2019, and we were collecting a lot of data on water quality, soil
Mhm.
quality, sediment, microbiology of the river, as well as what is the kind of trophic structure around this small stream. Because generally,
Yes.
with rivers, we know that there are crocodiles in Baroda, but
Yeah.
for streams, we really wanted to see if they are accessing it.
Okay.
So there was this running joke that no crocodile will be seen in Bhukhi because it's a nala. It's not a stream. So then this idea set in that we need to change that visual appeal that this river has. It's a
Right.
stream, it's a natural rivulet, which we found on mapping. Up until then, even we thought it's a nala, it's a man-made structure, but it wasn't. It was a rivulet which was connecting a wetland to a river, which was accessed by crocodiles. Only thing is, it was so laden with plastics and debris that we couldn't
Yes.
even see those crocodiles move, and a lot
I
of
see.
untreated sewage that went into it. So we
Mhm.
started small by just collecting basic water and soil quality parameters.
Mhm.
Soon, at the second month mark, when we had only one more month of sampling left, which was in January, we
Mhm.
realized that we need to also do something about this waste. So we got two more students involved who were interested in looking at the degradable and the non-degradable waste that is fallen around the stream. We did a cleanup with the university where the university funded it. They called more people, and we were able to go to department and bring out more people, not just from environmental sciences, but we had students from maths, commerce, arts, even HODs and professors from all the departments, whoever saw that these
Mhm.
students they have gotten down and dirty and they're like, putting their
Great.
hands in the stream and removing the waste. Everybody who could find a glove and a mask at that time got in and
Wow.
did. It took 2 to 3 hours to remove 700 kgs of waste. We weighed the waste
Amazing.
and we segregated it. So it was amazing to see. But at the same
Yeah.
time, we always feel that if we were given more time, we might
Mhm.
have more waste. But then there's always the threat of the crocodile. So we came
Yes.
out. Next step was to get a better machine involved, get more contractual people involved who would do the cleaning on a more regular basis than it actually gets done.
Wow.
So out of the Bhukhi Stream project came out 10 BSc theses and two
Oh.
master's theses. One
Wow.
of which was mine and my classmates whose name's Kosha. And so about 12 theses came out of that project, which was on
Amazing.
scientific front. And 12 of us equipped with all kinds of knowledge. So all of us worked on all of the aspects. If one
Wow.
student was on water quality's impact, one
Mhm.
was on soil. But all 10, 12 of us did all the work so that we all move fast and we can get
Right.
the data and also the awareness. That we took that to the people. Initially,
Mm.
when we were mapping the stream, people used to be very awestruck. Why are these kids looking for a nala in the early morning, winter morning of Baroda? Because we'll go and ask, "Kya aapne nala dekha hai?" And the
Uh,
responses would not come. They'll be just astonished, like, why are they looking for it? And they'll be
mm.
like, yeah, there's a small nala in the back. We throw our waste there.
Oh.
So we used to sit there for quite some time, see how people like walk along on the bridge, throw the waste and all these things. Many
Correct.
times when we went for sediment sample collection, we got caught by police because all the equipment in our vehicle was enough for a crime scene because we had spade, we had chemicals, we had gloves,
Right.
we were like digging the soil. So then we had to show our letters and everything of permission, and it was good because they were also worried about us because it is filled with crocodiles.
Right.
So it started like that, many funny moments, many challenges, and And but yeah, the team endured, and we were able to clean it up and make people
Exactly.
understand that smaller streams are as relevant for connecting larger river bodies.
True, true. So I mean, it's just amazing to look at the quantum of work conducted in such a short span of time. And as you're mentioning that there's so much of output, so many theses came out of this small, uh, you know, small work as such, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think if crocodiles would have joined your movement, they would have definitely put on gloves and would have helped you collect even more garbage than you could.
Yeah.
So I mean, definitely cartoon can come up, from this story. It's an amazing story. I really loved it, and it
Yeah.
is a true story, factual story,
Yeah.
and I think people of Gujarat can definitely relate with this.
Yeah.
It's amazing, Sneha. I mean, I think all our audience will love to know more about your work. Read these theses which have been published, and they will get to know that so many things can be done around such a small area, study area,
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
you plan it properly, and if there is something you can even connect it with the socio ecological studies too.
Yeah.
Amazing work, so congratulations for that.
Cute.
So moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
So I mean, now we know that you are also working with the community, and as we also know that you have been working with UN and CEE
Yeah.
on plastic waste aid. So how did this experience aid in the career development of you as a conservationist?
Yeah. So, Plastic Tide Turners campaign started in 2019 with its first
Mhm.
phase, where
Okay.
they had a workshop done in Ahmedabad where I met the CEE people, all of whom were so gracious to teach us about plastic. And
Mhm.
not just that, they trained us to be leaders, be advocates, and not for like banning plastic. The
Okay.
whole point of plastic tide turners was let's respect how valuable plastic is. It should
Right.
not end up in open environments. It's an essential boon which needs to be handled and managed more carefully.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we have this brilliant thing which can be used for so much medical purposes, so much technological innovations, and yet we are making single-use plastics, and all of that is ending up in open environments.
Yeah.
So the whole point was to understand and develop this strategy to make more people involved in understanding what are the different kinds of plastics and how we can manage them better. If there are alternatives available to you and affordable to you, do make the switch. But if not, try and phase them out of your daily consumption,
Right.
because we cannot go around preaching alternatives which are so costly to everyone. People out
Yes.
there might not even have enough to afford the plastic alternative, so how can we ask them to switch to something which is even more costlier? So
Mm.
I went around the city. Again, these 10 students were involved in that as well, and
Okay.
some more. Another 20, 25 more were involved in doing a survey around Baroda.
Mhm.
And they did not spare anybody during the survey. They spoke to traffic policemen, they spoke to
Oh.
policemen, auto drivers, all mall
Right.
managers, restaurants, shops, everybody. So they spoke to everybody to understand, and the whole point was that people did understand how dangerous plastic can be once it ends up in open environment, but they did
Mm.
not really know if just segregating the waste or just phasing out is the solution. So from
Correct.
that, our work began, which was phase one. The report
Mhm.
got submitted in 2019, and the report I submitted, I was awarded the National Champion Award for it.
Wow.
And since then, right now, Tide Turners is in its fifth or the sixth phase now. It's starting, and I still remain connected with the CE team, with Madhvi ma'am, with Shrishti ma'am, and
Mhm.
UNEP team with Dr. Gayatri Raghava and Miss Arpan Singh, to
Yes.
work towards more plastic aware society. My role
Mhm.
is a voluntary role in both these organizations when it comes to plastic, but they've never let me feel that. They've always treated me as someone who is standing there talking about plastics. And they still continue to say, we don't know if we'll find a stronger case study to make the point that you can be an advocate, an activist, and a scientist at the same time. Because
Right.
bringing science into education and then creating awareness out of it is something I feel very strongly about, because
Yes.
the whole conservation sector has to be data driven, and I
Yeah.
feel that that really gives you, the grounding to understand the problem better and then create the solution, rather than just coming up with something that you saw on the internet and just applying it.
Yes, yes, true. So I think we are now talking about more plastic conscious society rather than completely phasing it out,
Yeah.
because that sounds like not an option in the current scenario,
Yeah.
but perhaps a slow switch, or at least understanding that there's a problem and we need to deal with it, and
Right.
it's going to be a long-term issue, for the environment, is what I think you're pointing towards. I think a lot of us have started hating plastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think we need to also change that philosophy a little bit. That it's not something that you can just get rid of just like that, but you have to start living with it. And
Exactly.
how you can do that best is, I think you are the best person to talk about that. Just now you told our audience how it generally goes, when such kind of policies are created, or at what global level what people are thinking.
Yeah.
So, with that, I would also like to ask you that you were the lead negotiator for policies for G77 plus China in Youth Climate Conclave for the United Nations Youth Assembly World Sustainable Development Summit, for
Yes.
which you won the award of Best Negotiator.
Yes.
So, what was it like to work on the diplomacy side of sustainable development? How fruitful were the negotiations?
So this was a mock UN kind of a thing, which
Okay.
happened in WSDS. It's called
Hmm.
YCC, which is the Youth Climate Conclave. Terry
Yeah.
University in Delhi organizes this every year,
Right.
and the cohort I was a part of was the first one, which
Mhm.
happened again in 2020 February.
Okay.
So we had negotiations happening. So all of us were like, on a lottery basis, given some countries allotted to us. And just before, this was just before COVID. At that time, there was one case and in India. So we were like just in the event, we were discussing things, and the idea was to see how different roles students can play into understanding what a country's backing is. Some countries have resources in terms of humans, some have in terms of technology, some have both, some don't have either. So when there are LMDCs, which is the like-minded developing countries, when there are EU kind of countries which are extremely developed and great on technology, and then there are countries which are island countries. So how all these countries, interact with each other on a global platform is what the mock was about. The age group of where all these kids were discussing, all the students were from India, but all of them were, debating against each other and for separate policies. The idea for which I feel our team might have won was that when we were told to stand up and like tell what we need from other countries and what we would give them, was that we as G77 plus China and specifically India are brilliant on disaster preparedness and prevention at this point. Our
Mhm.
NMDCs are doing amazing job when it comes to disaster management. So we would
Right.
like to give you the kind of training that we have for handling large populations during global and national level disasters. And in
Right.
exchange, we would want your traditional and technological knowledge in transfer for our countries, so that we can have those capacity building activities more enhanced in our developing nations, and you can have training for handling more people because now you are seeing a surge of immigration in your country. So I think this
Right.
might have been the idea that led our team to win.
Right. So, I mean, that sounds really fantastic, and I think what you are mentioning is, I guess, is a global issue. And just you were talking about this pre-pandemic, and the world has seen the pandemic. So, I guess what you were negotiating would have actually should have been translated earlier, so that all these
Right.
disasters, even the pandemics, could have been controlled.
Exactly.
Amazing. So I mean, that's also another side of how these negotiations go,
Yeah.
and what exactly happens at a global stage. I think for our audience, it was a new information that you provided, Sneha. So thanks
Yeah.
for that. So now once again, let me come back to the rivers, and
Yeah.
you are doing a PhD in which you are planning to do native tree plantation, reforestation on Thamirbarani River, which is in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
So, what has been the progress so far regarding this? What other on-ground issues are the river and the local community are facing?
Right.
and what are your plans to deal with them?
Right. So at ATREE, there is a project run by Dr. Subhadra Devi and Dr. Srinivas Badigir, both of
Okay.
whom are in my doctoral committee. Dr. Badigir is my supervisor. My
Okay.
PhD work is related to understanding rivers' ecological and environmental health and how people perceive it using the social ecological systems theory and trying to link river ka environmental flows to agriculture and fisheries. But on the
Yeah.
other side of it, to expand more on the project, Dr. Devi had this idea with the Agasthamalai Community Based Conservation Center that
Mm.
we need to restore the parts of the river to have
Mm.
a corridor connectivity within the river. So there are
Okay.
invasive species like prosopis, which are on the
Mm.
bank, which are sort of making the banks wider and more sandy. That leads to more
Okay.
evapotranspiration.
Right.
So why not plant trees which A, the local community is interested in having in their backyards, and B, are native plants.
Right.
So first year of the project in 2022, in support with the district administration of Tirunelveli,
Mm.
involved a lot of ecological baseline studies where we understood what is there on the banks right now in terms of vegetation and all
Mhm.
kinds of fauna. Next
Okay.
step was to understand its hydrology,
Mhm.
about how are the flows of the river in summer, winter, and again
Mm.
in
Right.
monsoon, because this landscape has two monsoons. It receives the
Right.
north and the southeast monsoon.
Right. Right.
So we were looking at these things in the first year. That led to creation of a detailed project report, which was given
Mm.
out for public dissemination through the district administration. It's still available in the Tirunelveli office. It's a
Okay.
concise, not so concise document of 150 pages, where
Yeah.
it not just involves the ecological information, but the social structure of the
Uh,
district, as well
right.
as cultural need of the river, cultural significance of the river, and the
Mhm.
requirement of DWAS, which are the decentralized water treatment systems, for
Mm.
managing sewage that ultimately flows into the river. So this was the
Okay.
first year of the project, and the second year of the project, they are developing more environmental education outputs of it,
Mm.
engage more kids and young people into the river's conservation and understanding its hydrology, ecology, so that we have people living in the landscape who understand the value of the only perennial river of Tamil Nadu that starts
Mm.
and stops within the state, has no transboundary issues. So it's
Right.
interesting to see where this goes. For the time being, I have switched to my PhD data collection, so I'm less involved in the project. However, I know that the restoration part that's going on is doing
Okay.
fantastically. They have planted the first saplings of native plants in December.
Oh,
Unfortunately, there was a flood, so all
okay.
saplings survived. But we
Mm.
did a cleanup. I got a grant to do it, so I did a cleanup of the bank in order
Okay.
to remove all the waste that came during the flood, balance out the sediments. And there's a
Mm.
local team called Egg Foundation. Even they have
Okay.
gotten very involved in it, and now all of them together, like different partner organizations together, they are doing the plantation, which is
Right.
ecologically, culturally, and locally relevant.
Right. Right. Okay. Oh, that sounds great. Actually, that so many people are involved in this project, and
Right.
also unfortunate to know that due to flood, there was some destruction.
Yeah.
But I guess in the long range, this is going to really help. In the rejuvenation of the native flora over there. So,
True.
what about the fauna? What has been your research on the biodiversity of this particular river? And I mean, can you tell us more about your work on the biodiversity part of the river?
Yeah. So I was more involved with the vegetation part of things, or creating the
Mhm.
biodiversity checklist for the vegetation in the first phase. I'm
Mhm.
not a ecologist, however, I do understand ecology and zoology a little bit. But we
Mhm.
did have ecologists on the team. We had we had Aditya Ganesh, we had Dr. Sheshadri. So
Yeah.
all of whom were looking at otters at the time.
Okay.
They've been wanting to develop a project to understand the baseline of the otters, how many are there, where they are placed, in order to formulate plans better. And then
Right.
further on, make otters the keystone species. Like in
Right.
Bhukhi, I made sure that I was not directly working on crocodiles, but the
Yeah.
crocodiles became a keystone species, a flagship rather, to make
Mhm.
people understand the value of an ecosystem. So with Tamraparni, I think if we are able to create a baseline of otters, we'll
Mhm.
be adding to the IUCN Otter Specialist Checklist group. And
Mhm.
along with that, it will also help people to understand what otters are. They did a few baseline surveys on social surveys on otters.
Right.
Many women did not even know what an otter is, and we
Oh,
feel it's because women visit the river only in the afternoons, but men visit the river in the day and in the later half of the day
right.
also, even at night. So their
Right.
encounters with the fauna that are like, more shy and elusive and prefer like
Right.
less disturbance is more than women's. So let's see if we can make a education or awareness module rather, where we
Mhm.
can make people who've not seen it directly, but show them pictures and show that this is in your backyard. That
Right.
make them feel more connected with what's out there, even if they don't see it or encounter it on a daily basis.
Interesting. I mean, your observations about the land use of different communities is just amazing, and also I think there is temporal allocation
Yes.
of gender visits to this particular area. So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting observation indeed. So apart from the flora fauna, are you also integrating community outreach in your PhD work?
Yes. So, as a part of my PhD work, I have received a grant from Reearth.
Okay.
The idea is to create a small workshop and a education module for
Okay.
about 2 to 3 chapters on river conservation, because we
Mhm.
have a lot of restoration plans in India. We have a lot
Yeah.
of projects that gain wind, but
Yeah.
I strongly feel concretizing the banks of a river to make a riverfront is not it. You can do that for some stretches if the bank is very unstable and you want tourism, but you cannot concretize the entire river. We cannot and should not tame rivers. They need to be constantly changing their structure, their formations, their ebb and
Yes.
flow. They have to
Yes.
be dry, they have to flood.
Right.
It's their natural regimen. We cannot
Yeah.
alter that. So the idea
Yeah.
is to develop a education module regarding the same, to make people understand that these kind of things are the
Yeah.
natural state of a river, and
Yeah.
cater it to the age group of 9 to 14, like
Okay.
pre-teens. And if everything like goes systematically, by October we might have this. So that's a part of my PhD's output as well.
Okay. So my next question was actually, directed towards your opinion about the river front development projects or river concretization projects, as
Mm.
I might would like to say it.
Yeah.
So we know that there is a spate of river development projects, especially for urban rivers in India.
Yeah.
So what is your take on this situation?
Right. So for urban rivers, I feel when I talk to engineers, even my brother is an engineer.
Mhm.
The idea is like, let's clean it up. Let's make it look clean. I
Right.
feel that's not enough. You don't have to make it look clean. You have to make it look like a river. You cannot just concretize and keep cleaning by putting screens and chambers. It's not an
Mhm.
STP. Uh,
Yeah.
as for urban rivers, rural rivers, most of them are pretty safe. But with the
Mhm.
growing population of villages into towns and then urban larger towns and then cities, the way it's expanding, all of these rivers are slowly now facing problems. Like Tamraparni, for example, from what Dr. Subhadra tells us, she's been working in the landscape for more than 20 years now. She tells us that there was a time if you throw puff rice, fishes would come and eat it, and you can see the bottom of the river. Now you don't see that because there's so much population increase, there's so much sewage that goes into it. So then how do we manage that? So then your restoration strategy to make the river clean shouldn't be to concretize it, but to stop or to treat the sewage that goes into it. you know and with restoration plans, as it has been the case in India, I am hopeful with the Namami Gange plan. I'm really hopeful for it, because I don't think Ganga Action Plan worked because it had cities marked in tiers, like different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And it was a more top down approach rather than being a bottom up approach. And I think that was the shortcoming of GAP. With new action plans coming in place, I feel they all need to look at ponds, streams, and the connectivity between pond, stream, and the wetland, and then the river. I think only then can we stop the flow of waste into the rivers, which ultimately goes to the ocean. Same goes for
Right.
sewage, and same goes for the ecosystem services that all these freshwater systems on land provide.
Very true, actually. So, what your observations about all these projects and the ecology, how the ecology of the river is going to change? I think it's pretty straightforward. We all understand that. And apart from the river development projects, a lot of rivers are facing increased water pollution, urbanization, and most of the rivers are also a place where you can see water hyacinth growing,
Yeah.
stagnancy, and turbidity and all that. So how does citizens can help? How does citizens can control this pollution?
So many students reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, like, we want to do something, we want to join your project. But
Mhm.
to all of them, I say, I have a team, we are working on it.
Right.
Sadly, there is enough problems everywhere. If you go out and you look out there, you might see the same image I have posted of a dirty river or a dirty stream in your own
Yes.
city or in your own village. So
Right.
start there. Go
Yes.
out and identify these problems and see
Mhm.
how strongly you feel about it. Find your
Yes.
Everest. Like, it can be a
Mhm.
small pond in your locality. It can be as small as, it'll be, it'll not be even like hosting any birds or anything. It might just have hyacinth on it and waste thrown in it. Just start
Yes.
there. Find out who in the panchayat or who in the local municipal board is responsible for it.
Mhm.
Go and discuss with them. It's conservation is not a blame game. It's about
Yeah.
discussions and stakeholders in order to come to a consensus for conserving the resources. Go out there,
Yes.
talk to them, see if you can, get more people involved in it. Just talk to people. If nobody comes, go out there alone. I assure
Mhm.
you, you will go out there alone, and in like less than no time there will be more people wanting to be involved in it. Because when you clean a pond in your own locality, you will also not want anybody else to dirty it. It's like that, because
Yes.
you need stewardship of it. You want to
Yes.
keep back, you want to keep monitoring it, and it starts very small. Like I said, Bhukhi is 7 kilometers long. It led to so many bachelor's and MSc theses. It led
Yes.
to me developing my PhD work. It led to
Right.
me being an advocate for water and sanitation. So it starts small. Identify the
Yes.
problems and solve them in the most conventional way possible. Do not
Correct.
go out looking for rocket science. You have to be
Yes.
very conventional, tread the line between traditional methods and, scientific methods. And I feel
Yes.
we can do something even with hyacinth. Now there are like, I think there are startups which are trying to harvest hyacinth and create more products out of it. I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic. But to slowly phase out hyacinth, it will still take time because the water needs to dry, the seeds need to be removed from sediment. It will take time, but it's a
Yeah.
very interesting opportunity for people who are wanting to get into sustainable businesses, because
Mhm.
hyacinth is out there everywhere. So start
Yes.
harvesting and see if you can make something out of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to mark some of your words here in this particular answer of the question. I think you have beautifully narrated what the layman can do for the conservation. And as you rightly said, that find your Everest, even small pond, small area, small wetland, you start
Yeah.
working over there. No need to do something really great, big. And even with the baby steps, you can go ahead and do conservation if you really want to do, and then
Yes.
people will follow you. So I think very well narrated by you, Sneha. Amazing. So far this conversation has been really insightful for me, for our audience. A lot of new information you talked about. I'm now moving on to my last question of this podcast, and this is about you working in the field as a female researcher. What are the challenges you have faced, and what message do you want to pass on to our audience?
Right. Um, so I'm very young to be doing a PhD is something I get to hear a lot. I'm, what do you call it? I'm too young to be in places where negotiations and diplomacy is happening.
Right.
So these things I hear a lot. But then
Okay.
my idea there is not like, oh, I'm too young to be doing this. My idea is, why are there not more people here? Why are
Right.
more younger women or younger kids not here doing the same? They do have access to a lot of knowledge. They can provide it to people who
Yes.
are too stuck in their role. Because sometimes that happens, you reach a
Yes.
position of authority and then you have to just focus on administration. You don't have enough time to, gain more
True.
knowledge. I feel all the people working out there in any field at in places of authority need to take a look back how they were when they were young and find more such people to, consult and advise them on.
Yeah.
As a woman in the field, it gets difficult sometimes to be taken seriously because no
Yes.
matter how far we've come, imposter syndrome does set in when you're doing a PhD or you're doing academics,
Yeah.
and there is underrepresentation. With respect to women hydrology role models, I have
Mm.
not come across many. There are many who are working on water and agriculture and things like that.
Right.
But for me, finding role models has been hard. So I've
Mm.
had role models in Gayatri ma'am. I've had role models in my own these kids that I call in Himani, in
Mm.
Yuti, how they like conduct themselves, how gracefully they do work, and yet they are so fierce with it. So finding those role models has been hard, but then you have to look out there and find them. There is
Right.
definitely gender bias. There's definitely a gender bias. I remember when during Bhukhi we used to step out into some government office. If the two guys in the team, so out of 12, there were only two guys. If they step, it's a different thing. But if we step, it's a different thing. So what we started doing is all 12 of us, all 10 of us will enter the room together. So there was one instance where I was late. So I reached and nobody had gotten inside. So then I go in and it was just a casual discussion with a faculty member at architecture, Dr. Shishir Rawal. And I go in and all these other 9, 8 people also get in. And he's like, wow, this is commendable that, they did not come until you came. They could have just started the conversation. So giving way to each other and finding that balance between the healthy way to do science and the healthy way to do conservation is something that is essential to overcome such a challenge of gender
Right.
bias and all those kind of things.
Amazing.
And the biggest challenge I feel is if you are an empath like me, if you get really affected by seeing problems out in the world, you need to
Mm.
also start like sort of disconnecting yourself from it and looking at the bigger picture of how you can continuously learn and translate that empathy into passion. Because
Right.
unless you're fueled by that empathy for nature, uh, you cannot wake up every day and choose being resilient. You have to choose being resilient. Only then a nala becomes a stream. Because in our
Yes.
country, in most developing countries, the case is streams are becoming a nala. But try and see, find your nala and convert that into a stream. Because your impact, everything you do, even your dedication and commitment, it matters at the end of the day, and it will matter for future generations to come.
Great. So great words, Neha. Definitely, I think our audience is, I think, now motivated to do something on ground. Your actions talks a lot actually about your work, and we are really fortunate that you are doing a PhD. So you are putting in pure sciences in what you do, and as
Yeah.
you rightly mentioned, that there has to be a good science done so that
Yeah.
we have on ground good policies, we have on ground good action as such in
Yes.
place. So it was amazing discussion, amazing conversations, Neha.
Indeed.
I loved it. I think all of our audience will also say the same. So thanks a lot for being
Yeah.
on this People of Nature podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for the opportunity. I hope more and more people get involved in conservation by listening to this and other podcasts that I've also had the opportunity to listen to. So, once again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sneha.